Well, hello again, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us on Beyond the Listings, the Amazon podcast from VentureForge. It feels like it's been a while since I've been sat in the chair hosting, introducing. One familiar face, two fresh faces around the table. But before we kick off with introductions, let me reintroduce ourselves and the topic of today's podcast. So I'm Andy Banks. I'm the CEO of VentureForge, and we're an Amazon agency that helps enterprise and large-scale brands make Amazon more commercially successful. Today, we're here to talk to you about a topic that's close to the hearts of a few of us around the table, and that's how licensed brands can make more success of Amazon. Before I delve into questioning you guys and throwing you under the interrogation lamps, which nobody can see because there are some massive interrogation lamps up here. Can I start with some introductions? Trav, you're a familiar one. I want to go straight to you if you don't mind.
Thanks, Andy. Hey, everyone. Good to be back. So I'm Travis, head of vendor. Been in the Amazon game about 7 odd years now. Really doesn't feel like it with all the stress. But started my career at Amazon, health and personal care, beauty, moved into pharmaceuticals after that, and then into the agency game where I lead up a very skilled team here at VentureForge. So good to be part of the talk today.
Thank you, Trav. Thanks for joining us.
We'll go with our guest.
Let's go to our guest, Matt. Would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone. My name's Matt. I'm the IT and systems manager at Rainbow Designs. Been there for about 6 years, working in and around Amazon e-commerce space. Started off in marketing, moved over to sales management, and now managing the channel and working with VentureForge. Rainbow Designs, we're a licensed plush toy manufacturer and distributor. We've got some big names: Paddington, Peter Rabbit, Guess How Much I Love You, those sorts of things.
Was that a question? Sorry, Guess How Much I Love You?
Yeah.
Yes.
One of my favourites as a child, actually, so it's very on brand. Been on Amazon for years and years, but really just started to get teeth in about 5 years ago.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt, and thank you for joining us and making the short trip up.
No trouble, yeah. 7 hours here, not too bad.
Thank you. And last but by no means least, and I'm saying that deliberately after the feedback I got from you this week, Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Jonathan Newton. I'm VentureForge's co-founder and chief operating officer. I've been in retail and digital forever, since I was 15, 16. So kind of retail, brands, products is all I've really ever known. I've spent maybe the last 10 to 15 years specifically in digital and Amazon. So I'd like to think by this point I've got a reasonable understanding of what I'm doing. But podcast virgin. So first time today.
Wow.
Hoping that I come across okay. People don't need subtitles for my northern twang. But let's see. Let's see how we get on.
They've needed it for mine for quite some time.
Let's see how we go.
Probably the most linguistically diverse podcast I've ever done, with different accents coming in from everywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
Exciting.
It does indeed, mate. It does indeed. So thank you for joining us, everybody. Really appreciate you getting involved today. Before we go on to start the conversation, just a quick prompt for anybody who's watching this going out live for the first time. Please get your questions and answers in. If you're watching this on our live broadcast, somewhere towards the bottom end of the screen, Whitney always asks me to point down, but I don't know where it actually lands. Somewhere around here, there should be a Q&A button. And if you want to ask your question on there, we'll have various members of our team in the background ready to answer your questions. So please keep them coming. So, gents, we're here today to talk about licensed brands and how licensed brands and probably licensors and licensees, and it might be worth us just talking about the difference between them for those that aren't aware. How do they make the most of Amazon? What are their unique challenges? How can they exploit Amazon as a channel? And how can licensors and licensees work together? Can I just ask one of you guys just introduce kind of what is licensed brand? What do we mean by that as a topic? And what's the difference between a licensor and a licensee? Let's get the daft questions out of the way first.
This is the bag, yes. It's licensing IPs to specific manufacturers, distributors, making sure that it's segmented by channel and by property. So obviously one licensor has many, many licensees, and it's that combination to be able to leverage all the sales channels in unison. Can't look at them in silos, and making sure that all the licensees as well are sort of running in line, making sure that everything's consistent across the board with brand messaging and advertising and things like that.
Let's give you an example. You mentioned in your intro, obviously, your Rainbow Designs, you're help me out, I want to get this wrong, I do it every time, licensee.
Licensee, yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Good. I'm deliberately doing the naughty stuff first. Absolutely. But you mentioned there that you've got Paddington, you've got Guess How Much I Love You. So they're the licensed property that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're running those licenses across soft plush toys.
Yeah.
But alongside you, you've got other kind of counterparts, I guess, in the industry that might be doing that on hard lines, bedroom furnishings.
Exactly, yeah. So we offer, we've been in business with a lot of our licensors for a long period of time. And it is quite funny how the market is, you know, your licensee partners are also your competitors working in that same realm. You're all competing for the same, you know, keywords, but it's all segmented within the categories. So we're soft, baby, and gifting territories. And it's the same with all the restrictions, depending on whether it's, you know, where you can distribute with your specific regions, or making sure that you have very specific guidelines and boundaries around how your product needs to fit the bill for market.
I've always found your sector quite interesting with that, 'cause you describe them as competitors, but I found it to be the most open industry. There's literally groups in your industry where competitors in the traditional sense work
Definitely.
together.
Yeah, you're all in it together. It's, you know, a lot of the physical shows and things like that. And one of the methods that you can help to, you know, leverage Amazon is make sure that you're speaking to your friends in the business. And because it's all consistent throughout, you need to have that understanding of the general space to be able to know how you benchmark and make sure that you're making those right decisions along the way.
So it sounds like you've got a wonderful business to be in. You've got somebody creating this amazing property, I guess is the language from your industry. Somebody's created your Paddington. You guys create phenomenal products in your little vertical, I say little bit, in your own niche vertical below that, alongside your counterparts. Sounds like somebody's doing a great job of teeing this up, ready to sell, and you're putting products in the market. But of course, that sounds also like it could come with quite a few challenges. You've got the licensor and the licensee both kind of responsible for making sure the brand is well represented, but that's also been done across you guys, your counterparts in product category 1 and product category 2.
Yeah.
What kind of challenges do you typically see around this sector?
I mean, we have an amazing brand team, and as well, because we're sort of we're sort of tail to snout. We do the design, the manufacturing, the distribution, across multiple regions. It can be challenging aligning all those things, making sure you're all working to the same goal. And there are many ways that you can help do that, but essentially it comes down to, you know, your interdepartmental collaboration and making sure that everything is all teed up, ready to go, making sure that assets and, you know, brand house styles and house guides are consistent across every platform and channel. Because, you know, what you can put on Amazon needs to be reflective of what you're also putting on your Argoses and your Verys and your Next and your in-store presence as well. So yeah, it can be quite challenging. There's a lot of spinning tops, and I don't envy the license or having all of those different licensed elements.
I'm sure we'll come on to the question later on, Andy, because I suspect we'll naturally go into this territory. But I think there's a really stark contrast between what happens on Amazon with licensors and licensees to what happens in, you mentioned Argos and typical bricks and mortar as an example. The real differentiation between these two things is, as an example with Argos, you'll have a merchandising team and a brand team and a marketing team bringing together all of those licensed products on behalf of the brand IP effectively to create a consumer offering which feels consistent, the same. So all Peppa Pig products together are relevant to whether there's 50 licensees underneath that. And you get the same in retail principle as well. So coming from a retail background many, many years ago when I was less grey and had more hair, you know, in-store merchandising teams would look at planograms, would bring ranges together. So therefore the consumer experience didn't really have the need to feel any differentiation. And I think that's the big contrast with Amazon, is that there's no one single person owning that IP within Amazon. Amazon certainly don't do it. Agencies like ourselves are moving into that space to try and chaperone all of that together. But interesting how you talk about that. There isn't really any competition between the licensees, and I appreciate there isn't. There's also not a need to help one another either. So if I'm selling plush toys as an example, I care about my plush toy sales and what's going on. If I'm a pajama licensee, for instance, I don't really care necessarily about how your sales are doing and vice versa. And that's the real opportunity and the gap that exists in the market for Amazon, that those licensee communities are not operating under one predominant umbrella to bring together that brand portfolio.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. People forget that Amazon doesn't reward brands, they reward sellers. So if you don't have that brand consistency within your own portfolio, correct product images, consistent brand tone, consistent brand messaging, it's just going to be a complete mess to essentially customers. And with that, you already dilute your overall brand image because customers don't sort of see the segmentation. They just see the brand and they don't actually realize there's numerous sellers within that brand, essentially. So I think it's always remember to keep focus on yourself as a seller. Don't focus on yourself as a brand licensee, if that makes sense.
I think there's some great examples that do happen on Amazon. I think I'm going to come at this very much from an opportunity angle today of I think brands are under-exploiting the opportunity within Amazon, very much so. But certainly in the toy category and children's licensed products, there are lots of brands doing this incredibly well. So if you take someone like Hasbro, of course, licensor of Peppa Pig, they're doing a phenomenal job of coalescing or chaperoning their licensees to bring together a cohesive experience. But there are many, many brands that just aren't doing that. I've got some great examples to talk about later today.
Well, maybe we should just dive into one of those. I'm going to try and keep this as nameless as possible, so we're not kind of openly.
That's ruined my entire next 25 minutes.
Well, we're finished. We can go now. We're done. Episode finished. But thanks for joining us again, gents. It was great. But no, there's one yellow cartoon character in particular I know you and I have talked about many times.
This is not The Simpsons, no.
It's the other one.
Do they happen to have small trading cards attached to them?
No.
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, it depends. I'll come on to that point. It depends whether you're looking at their brand store number 1, brand store number 2, brand store number 3, the proliferation of products that they've got on Amazon. So this example given here, so Pokemon, we'll name it. Pokemon, huge international brand, huge recognition. But if you look at how that brand is represented on Amazon, it is highly, highly, highly fragmented. Tens of thousands of products. Some are genuine. Proper licensed products coming through good third parties. Some are grey market products leaking in from licensees in other territories. Some are Me Too copycat products, not official, but still selling under the brand. And from a customer experience point of view, and the customers coming in and wanting to buy into that brand because Pokemon have done a great job of creating the brand, the customer journey and the experience from that point is so unbelievably fragmented. And I don't see any of the 3 parties involved taking care of that. The brand owners not, Amazon aren't, and the sellers aren't.
I think the brand owner's doing a great job of representing their trading cards business.
Yes, correct.
So if you just want Pokemon trading cards, that brand store is an exceptional example of what good looks like. It's seasonally relevant. It's got new product development in it. It's well put together. It's on brand. It's everything I was going to say a child. We can't all profess to being just children have Pokemon. It's a great example. But if I'm looking for merchandise for my children's birthday party or for Christmas, and I want maybe some Pokemon bedspreads, some trading cards, some toys, maybe a latest console title, I have to come out of that brand store environment. I have to move around the Amazon ecosystem. And that's where the licensees are really missing that opportunity to cohabitate that same space. Because guess what? If I'm a parent on a budget and I want to do a one-stop shop with an Amazon, I want to buy everything at the same time from a brand store to build that brand's lifetime value and get everything my child wants. And it's just not possible.
I think the other areas I see this is football licensing. I'm going back to my own experience of my son, absolute football fanatic. He wants something from, come to Christmas, what does Jack want? Liverpool FC. But does he want a kit, a ball, something for his bedroom? That's not how we're shopping. It's not a particular mission. It's what have they got from Liverpool FC for Jack? Highly, highly fragmented. There's no central point of shopping. And that's just one very small example.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, we have seen, especially in sporting verticals at the minute, so like the Premiership, like the NFL as an example, Amazon are starting to make headway into merchandising products together that do offer a semi-seamless customer experience to be able to buy the football, the shirt, the boots, and et cetera, et cetera. But of course, because they're not creating anything for the brand, all they're really doing is pulling products together into a merchandising assortment. But what the lost opportunity is how does that brand live and breathe, and how does it portray itself to the consumer and change with the weather? So as an example, a Premiership football team should have a player profile of the month. It should have latest fixtures on there. It should talk about the club's values and vision. That's the opportunity to really build a brand on Amazon, and that's what's fundamentally being lost by absolutely almost every branding question.
Yeah, and just to add to all of that, the level of control, with what you can do on Amazon. You might look at Rainbow Designs. All of our product isn't branded as the license; it's branded as Rainbow for that control and for that consistency. So you're looking for a Peter Rabbit or a Very Hungry Caterpillar or a Guess or a Paddington. They're all in that rainbow space to be able to bring that in, and that's something that we try and leverage to make sure that the experience is consistent. We've got many licenses that we work with, and trying to bring them into that cohabiting space to be able to make sure that the journey is consistent and that you can apply learnings from one to the other is absolutely critical to making sure that the customer journey is efficient.
Just help me there, Matt, understand another layer of complexity to this. So in my overly simplistic world, if I'm buying into Peter Rabbit, for me, there should be a Peter Rabbit view on Amazon, a Peter Rabbit world on Amazon. However, at your level, that's not your interest is not to make Peter Rabbit look good on Amazon. It's to make Peter Rabbit look good in order to sell your product under your brand that you're responsible for. You're not held accountable. I can't imagine Zara saying to you internally, Matt, does Peter Rabbit look great today? The question will be, how much Peter Rabbit have we sold today?
Yeah, and it's a very we're looking into the responsibilities of where that lies. One of the core boons that a licensor can do is to knit all of the licensee's products together into a dedicated brand store that is Peter Rabbit. Because obviously, if the brand is better, that's better for us as well as all the other licensees that are involved. And so you can almost end up with two views of the same product. One on a Rainbow Designs licensee brand store and one on a licensor that can tie it all together. I think having both is, it's absolutely critical, because otherwise you're going to miss the opportunity when you're looking.
I think that's where some of the more mature licenses are right now. So I've spoke to a contact at Disney 3 years back, and their internal team was split into two. You've got Disney controlling the brand on Amazon, working with third-party license operators, and then you've got their own brand product that they were trading and managing themselves, that they created themselves. We're working with some brands now. We can name Studio Canal. We work with them on their Paddington license, and we're helping them create a consistent view of Paddington across Amazon to help them sell more product via their third parties and help their third parties sell more product on Amazon. But I can probably count on one hand, maybe two, the number of people I know of in the sector that have taken that level of view from a license owner, from an IP owner's perspective. Well, why do we think that is? We know the challenges. It's a highly fragmented industry. Why are we not seeing the license owners taking more control?
I don't know, because it feels like the most obvious thing to do. I'll go back to my earlier point around retail merchandising principles. You would never walk into a store with a distinct shopper mission for a character and move around 5 to 6 different locations in that store to pick up the relevant merchandise. If best, it might be spread over 2 departments. You will shop within meterage, within 5 or 6 meter bays, and you'll get everything you need, and that's being put together by the retail team. I think where this falls between the cracks is brands caring explicitly about how their brands look and controlling the IP and where that product is being circulated to, and ensuring that it's conformant to the category, to the industry. I think licensees care a lot about the product and the brand IP, but to your earlier point, Andy, and Matt's point, care phenomenally about their own sales and driving that forward. And there isn't a middleman in this. There's no retail merchandising team. And to Travis's earlier point, Amazon's not going to do this in any way, shape, or form. So I think it has to come down to either a third party, like an agency like ourselves, like one particular dominant licensee, as an example, which you guys are for a number of your IPs, in particular Peter Rabbit, to go, hang on a minute, we can all do better to represent the brand, because once we better represent the brand, we all win. The consumer wins for a more centric offering. The licensor wins because you've got better brand control and better representation of the brand, and the licensees inherently sell more. So if I'm trying to send someone into a brand store, Matt, for a set of Peter Rabbit pajamas, as an example, are you likely to pick up a peripheral sale for a soft toy when the consumers come for pajamas? Highly likely, because if there's an affinity with the brand, consumers will spend more. That in turn increases royalties back up to the licensor. This is a win-win for everyone involved. Licensee wins. Amazon win, and we don't often like saying that a lot, but reality is they
Always
do.
win in the end.
Of course, why would they not?
If there's a win-win-win, we don't mind.
No, why would they not?
It's gotta be,
Licensee wins, licensor wins, consumer wins, which is the most important thing. And of course, Amazon is a byproduct win as well. So I think the obvious answer, Andy, is I don't really know why it's not happening more. I don't know whether it's a immaturity thing or the penny just hasn't dropped and we haven't taken those retail principles across into Amazon, and that's what we should be doing.
I think also it's the barrier to entry, whereas bricks and mortar historically is quite hard to get into. It's a high level of investment. They go direct to brand. It's not really a third-party seller that's selling it. Whereas on Amazon, anyone can create an Amazon account. If you've got a contact in the Far East that can manufacture goods that look similar to a brand, there might be a bit of an IP infringement, but if you change them just enough, you could sell it through Amazon. Whereas obviously bricks and mortar, highly centralized. You have direct relationships with the manufacturers, direct relationships with the brand. It goes back to grey market imports, for example, in the EU. If you've got a region in Italy where you sell a specific product, who used to say you can't transship it to Spain or France, and then it opens up a whole new sort of can of worms. So grey market imports ease of access, barriers to entry are a lot lower on
Yeah.
Amazon. If you have a little bit of cash or you got a bit of investment, you can go to that IP holder and be like, let me sell your brand. Like, I've got the money, I've got the down payment, let me sell it. Doesn't mean you're going to do a good job on it.
Creates almost a spider's web of problems in the sense that if the brand and the licensee community are not really tight on that particular IP, by homing in on what's the official product, what's the recognized product, what's the official stance on it, all that peripheral ease of market entry become the challenges around grey market goods or products that have entered a vertical where they shouldn't be traded in that particular territory or in that particular category. This is where it spirals. And I think when we start to look at some of the biggest brands, and interestingly, you mentioned football earlier, Andy, Real Madrid probably is the world's most recognizable football club. Their assortment is in tatters. Everything that looks, and apologies if anyone from Real Madrid's watching.
No, if you are watching from Real Madrid, you know the number.
Yeah, we know a great agency that can help.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you look at that, that threw me off.
That's fantastic. It's great.
It's a nice team.
You are not meant to be sales. You're meant to be operations.
No,
I think you're starting to find your new comfort zone.
Well,
shameless
watch
plugs.
the space. Their assortment is highly challenging. I can look at a product detail page and kind of go, this feels legitimate or not. But to a consumer who's coming with an expectation of official merchandise, if I'm buying from just keyword searches and jumping into different PDPs, how do I know I'm getting that real legitimate quality experience? How do I know the product's not going to be inferior? And little Johnny at home, that was me yesteryear, that experience is just kind of faltering from that point. However, well-merchandised brand stores, all the official merchandise products in it, great experience for the consumer.
Little Johnny that shopped on Amazon. Amazon was not around when you were a child.
Amazon was definitely not a thing, and I definitely don't like football either. Even the Northeast is a cardinal sin.
You make a point about the IP infringement. God, I dread to think how many kits my lad has got. He's just a football fan. He's a Liverpool fan, but he's a football fan through and through. I can guarantee I could search on Amazon today for football team kit. And I will find, if you're clever around the search, you will find fake products on there. I was going to bring us on to talk about IP and kind of how that's managed and the challenge that they're faced. Before we do, just another quick nudge. If you have got any questions, we've talked very kind of high level and conceptual about the challenges here for licensed brands, licensors and licensees on Amazon. But if you do have specific questions, please get those in using the little button at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching us go out live for the first time, and we'll answer throughout the next 45 minutes or so. So I want to kind of come back to, I guess, IP challenges, IP protections. We've talked about, true challenges, grey market goods coming in. I also know there's challenges for many brands of actually just being able to list their own product because of brand registry issues. What kind of challenges do we see in the day-to-day of licensed brands in the most broadest kind of view? Trading on Amazon?
I mean, well, yeah, it's a bit of a minefield, especially on Amazon with brand registry listings. One of the main things is when licenses change and you're bringing over similar product with same barcode and things like that. If the brand isn't correct and or isn't passed over in through the correct channels, you end up having to just have this battle with Amazon to sort of prove that you are authorized, and then that needs to go straight up to the licensor level for approval, and then go back down, and it can cause an almighty amount of issues through just what you can get on the listing, which can always affect the content, the marketing strategy. You need that to be consistent across all your licenses, and when you don't have the control because of whatever it may be with the brand is wrongly assigned or something like that, it can get really, really tricky very quickly.
But just to add some context, you're a proper business. You've got significant licenses on some of the biggest IP properties. I dare say that anybody who's got a child that's watching this has probably seen your products in shops, and you still face those challenges.
Yes, I don't think Amazon doesn't discriminate. It's we have excellent teams that are working together to make sure that these things come together, and you're always hinching all of your sales on a launch or all of your expectations, and when it does happen, it's not that frequent, but infrequently when it does happen, you've got a massive launch date, an omni market channel that you've got YouTube ads pushing through, Google advertising, other channel strategies. You list it, and only one or two of the images are live because of a compliancy issue, or it's pulling from a rogue trader or grey market. lands really flat, and that means that you then have to scramble to make sure that you're getting back up to scratch. And I think that's one of the things you need to be quite hot on when you're doing Amazon, especially in the license space, is being able to pivot, react, and make sure that you're prioritizing the necessary actions, because it's not only your brand, as in Rainbow Designs, that's on. It's the licensors. It's that big IP, and you don't want to let the customers down either. You need that experience.
I think, Matt, you make some really good points there, but there's also a vast, and let's be honest, we've seen this firsthand, not necessarily in Rainbow, but connected to the industry, that without adequate supply chain controls, this can end up like the Wild West in this particular category, toys and licensed brands in particular, where licensees, large licensees, will sell into wholesale, who will sell into wholesale, who will sell to wholesale, and before you know it, the products are out on a market stall on a Sunday afternoon. And that's a real concern for brands who are all trying to effectively drive growth for the brand, but the brand can in turn get rubbished. Price erosion, price elasticity bounces all over the place, and before you know it, a brand new product that's been launched with great intentions for a select price point to hit, all of a sudden can appear on Amazon at 50% less price, 75% less the price, because the market trader might work with single-digit percentage points, doesn't necessarily care, it's just about cash and volume.
Yeah.
And without those adequate supply chain controls, that's where brands can get into a real pickle over this stuff.
Yeah.
Got loads of questions around this. Can I just go back first to that challenge you had with getting a product onto Amazon?
Mm-hmm.
Where would you say the crux of that challenge exists? I'm going to deliberately ask it this way, and I'm hoping, and I'm pretty confident the answer is not the first bit, but is it with you guys as a brand and your lack of experience of getting that through brand reg? Is it with the license owner not setting up brand reg delegation, not supporting in the right way? Or is it Amazon, in inverted commas, just the challenge of dealing with Amazon in the middle and them not getting this sector particularly well?
Yeah, I think I'll go with the classic, it depends.
Yeah. Good answer.
Yeah, it'd be very non-committal. It's for distribution ranges that aren't specifically licensed but part of distribution deals, it can be quite difficult because they could be available in other markets. And those now, with Amazon being global, a listing in America from 4 years ago can affect your UK listing. And Amazon's interconnected nature and that sort of web can really make things rather difficult and a bit painful. And I think that some of their programs that they have with brand registry and with the brand representatives and the delegated roles, they are fantastic to utilize. However, if you don't have a structure around it, like an AVS or someone point of contact, it does sometimes end up being another case raising exercise.
Lost in a loop.
Yeah, bit of whack-a-mole, because you'll get sellers, like to your point, John, some will go to a discounter, get a whole bunch of units, list up as a seller. They don't care about your margin, they don't care about your brand image, they just want to make their own cash. They're sort of, they're not as much anymore, but those Amazon sort of hustlers, those guys on YouTube make £1 million in 2 weeks. Yeah. Those types of people are the ones that'll go and buy the product, sell it on single-digit margin, and just move on. They'll either list the product first with like the relevant EAN or create the ASIN first. You can't go and copy that because it's already been created. It just creates an entire sort of web down the line.
So that was the second point of what you said that I wanted to come on to, because I think there's a systemic flaw in licensing agreements that I've seen, in some of the licensing agreements I've seen. So John, you quite rightly called out this lack of control over distribution, product coming to the market. I always remember a case study we did with our very first client in the license sector, and we looked at the price erosion of one of their lines based on the number of sellers coming into the market, and it took 3 sellers, which appeared in 2 days, to move that product from their ideal RRP all the way down to pretty much 50 pence above cost price. The other, when I said it was like a systemic problem, what we also found with that particular client was they'd got an agreement with, I believe it was Star Wars, possibly Star Wars at the time. And there was a term in their agreement that said every year you have to release a new line and bring a new design to market. When they did that, that meant they had to liquidate the old stock. And all of a sudden that stock ends its way down at a market trader. So you try to bring brand new products out at, like, let's say 30 quid for the sake of argument. You've now liquidated last year's designs and they're now coming onto Amazon at 17 quid. Put yourself in our position as parents and you're going to buy your lad a Star Wars duvet set and you go on Amazon. One's at 15 quid, one's at 30 quid, and it's just a different design. You don't know that it's last year's design. Unless there's a new movie or a new release come out, you don't notice that. So that fundamental kind of flaw in that contracting approach kills the Amazon business and absolutely kills it. And I think there's a lack of experience there from the license owner of how Amazon works.
I'm maybe going to go back to one of my earlier points. I think this is not necessarily immaturity in the specific verticals. Licensors are phenomenal at selling and creating licensed branded products. Sorry, licensees are. Licensors are great at developing that IP and being in tune with what the market demands. But this is what we typically see all too often is the licensor brings out the product. Great, we've got the IP, pushes it down to the licensee. Can you create a product within your specialism vertical? Absolutely, we can. And off we go. We'll go and start selling that product. Everyone's gone, fantastic. We've all done a brilliant job. There's where the lack is, I think. That real consistent, dare I say, monitoring by the licensor to go, how are you treating this brand? How are you treating this product? What's happening with last year's product? Can we help in any way? Can we control it in a different way? And I think this is, dare I say, the kind of the snowballing avalanche challenge that you've mentioned, Andy, where it just becomes like the Wild West and this churn, quite rightly so, a really important churn because this type of product needs to stay fresh, needs to appeal to new audiences. Children get older or adults even get older. I think that's the biggest disconnect, the licensor and the licensee not absolutely dovetailing. And I don't just mean the one example like yourself, Matt. This has to be maybe the licensor and 50 licensees, however many are in the category, in a room, thrashing this out. What's the new launch plan? How do we get rid of old stock? How do we protect the brand?
And one of the things that we try to sort of alleviate those challenges is creating evergreen product and not, to your point, if you are doing a very fast churn and it's just a new thing and it's snappy, you are going to end up on this, wheel of just spinning the old and bringing in the new. And then the problem is obviously you're only focusing ever on the new and you let all that other stuff regress, all of those past lines. And what we try to do is apply formulas from, specific licensors and different brands to say, right, well, what's going to work if we apply it over here and come up with those standards and those criteria? Because otherwise you do end up, just looking at shiny and new, which is great when you're talking about shiny and new, but not for longevity.
That word standard's really important as well, because whilst we know, because we work with you guys, we've known you for many, many years, we know that you treat your IPs with the utmost care and respect and work with the brands tone of voice and brand guidelines to create those standards. But if you had a custody chain of, let's say, 15 licensees, you can bet your bottom dollar 5 of those licensees will not understand Amazon per se, will not understand what best practice is, will not adhere to the brand's tone of voice and guidelines, and all of a sudden you dilute the brand and the brand becomes a very different experience depending on whether you're landing on a t-shirt or a wall poster.
Yeah, I think the thing is stick to the fundamentals. Obviously, as a licensor, depending how big you are, once the cat's out of the bag, you can't get it back. It's like if you've got 1 million licensees selling thousands of different products, how do you corral that into one synchronized, centralized way of doing things to standardize it? So fundamentals would be playbooks or tone of voice guidelines or content branding guidelines, selective distribution channels, product exclusives for Amazon. I don't really want to get into pricing because that's at the sole discretion of the retailer, obviously, but you can sort of infer, like, guys, let's not maybe dilute the brand image. Let's keep your margin high. Let's keep our brand image high. So I think having a really open and honest conversation with your licensees to be like, look, this is our North Star. This is where we want to go. If you want to be part of the ride, you need to sign up to these conditions and you stick to the fundamentals. That's it. It's all about education. It's all about go continuous learning.
I'm going to poke the bear here. And I risk you guys saying stop, roll back, we'll recut that section. I don't think the license owner cares enough. And I think there's a maturity journey, or most license owners don't care enough. Hear me out on this. I think they see traditionally their job is to create a property that's got demand. And I won't name because I don't want this to be that license owner doesn't care enough, but a new movie comes out, their job is to create that demand, that desire around that. And then they pass over the ability to go and trade that to somebody like your business, Matt, who says, we're going to create a fantastic product to leverage that great opportunity. Beyond that point, I think most license owners believe their job is done.
Well, their job is to sell that product ultimately in isolation.
That's it, to sell the brand in isolation. But I think what's been missed for me, and I go back to the talk we gave at brand licensing in London back end of last year, I don't think people have realised, I think in your end of the sector, I think you've realised Amazon is bloody important. If I'm going to sell a product, it's probably going to be my biggest outlet. People are missing the fact it's not the biggest outlet for the brand itself. If you're going to shop anywhere, that is where your brand will be seen. And when I gave a talk at brand licensing, I did a bit of a stand-up, sit-down game, and it was stand up, but sit down if you think Amazon is not important to your business. most people were still stood up, and these were license owners. Sit down if you don't know the total sales generated by your brand on Amazon in the past period. Boomf, everybody down.
Yep.
You've got license owners of the biggest brands in the world, where Amazon is the biggest commercial window to their brand, and very few of them actually knew what sales were being generated. The only ones that did were dependent on that being fed to them by the licensees that are actually putting the products into market.
Yeah, I do think that is one thing that you do need to get across the line. Luckily, when I started 6 years ago, it was relatively infant as a area, specifically within our sector. Luckily, all of our licensors are very good with getting on board, and it's a exchange for both of us. We're learning through expertise in the business and boots on the ground. And when you come to a licensor with an opportunity, invariably they'll want more information, and then you can work through that plan together and go. And it's really start to see it's a bit like what you were saying about applying bricks and mortar thinking in a digital space.
Yeah.
And making sure those lines are drawn.
And that's a world that everyone understands, because we've done it for, I don't know how many years has retail been in existence. We've done it a long time. I mean, I'll go back to the work that, and I'm not going to take too much time talking about this. This is not a metaphorical case study, but the work that we did with Paddington and Studio Canal was designed to really inform that brand about what was happening in the Amazon space, because they didn't truly understand which licensees were selling well, which licensees were really respecting their brand. And by the work that we did to uncover, dare I say, lift the drains and let all the bad smells out, you start to understand which licensees are not treating that IP with care and respect, which are just throwing it up on Amazon and trying to make a cheap buck out of it. And that allowed Studio Canal to start to think about, well, actually, who's our preferred licensees? Who's doing a great job here? And actually, do we need to cut the tail potentially out of some of the licensees that are not treating our brand with respect? And that allows a community of licensees to come together, 3, 4, 5 brand teams to go, okay, well, actually, we need to all look and feel the same, because whilst we recognize we're selling our own individual products, what we've got is a responsibility up to the brand to make sure that Paddington looks like Paddington and never deviates from that. And, I think that's the central coordinating role that's missing. I'll go back to my earlier point. It's a retail merchandising team, typical in bricks and mortar, who are doing that. In Argos, it's a catalog team doing that. In a specific e-com retailer, you'll have a virtual merchandising team doing it. No one's playing that role on Amazon.
The assumption is that Amazon are doing it, but if you work on Amazon, you know that they're not.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know if it's an assumption, Andy, to be honest. I think there's just a blind spot in that whole custody chain where everyone's doing a phenomenal job in their own verticals and their own rights. No one's stopping and going, hang on a minute, why is all this not coming together?
I think it's something else you've prompted on there. You talk about lifting up the drains and using the data to direct what was going on to that particular license owner. I think there's a massive missed opportunity here for license owners to use the data from Amazon to work out where can they do better. And I don't speak of existing partners. If you've got a brand that is selling on Amazon, understanding which categories it's selling in, which categories are your adjacent brands selling in that you haven't got exposure in those categories where your adjacent brands are doing well, who's the licensee that's doing that? Who can you build your new partnership with? Is Harry Potter now selling more than Peter Rabbit across the board? What are the seasonal trends of the actual property and search demand, not just the sales that your licensees are reporting out to? There's a gold mine of data.
How do you create bundles of products from multiple licensees, as an example? What's the equivalent of a Peter Rabbit pajamas and plush set, as an example, because that's not a space that you're necessarily going to just delve into, because it's not your specialism. But by informing ourselves with that data, what does the consumer frequently buy together? What do they want? What's the price points? This is where I think the brand has got a wonderful opportunity to go, we're going to take a helicopter view in this and understand what's going on in the market and inform licensees of how these opportunities cohabitate, because everyone wins again.
Yeah, it's in their best interest. It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If they can sort of look at their licensees and help them do better, generate more sales, that means more royalties to the licensors. So essentially the wheel keeps turning, and you want to keep that flywheel. I don't want to go into the Amazon metaphors, but if you can continue growing that flywheel with more promotions, better content, seasonal changes, smarter advertising, you as a licensor are winning at the end of the day. Yes, your brands are making more cash individually, but you're making more royalties out of it. Everyone wins, which is the ideal sort of way of doing things.
Yeah, the point on royalties is a really interesting one, Trav, because I guess we're not sat here explicitly as experts in this sector. We've got an opinion. Matt, you're more of an expert, and I'm not going to ask you for this because this is opening up a...
Here it goes.
But if I suspect if IP owners and licensors were paid from the volume that was sold by the licensees, there would be far more interest in what was happening at the granular level in platform specific. I think my understanding from my limited knowledge is that you guys will pay an annual fee. Again, don't answer me on this. Just not approvingly. You will pay an annual fee for the luxury of being able to produce that license, and therefore the licensor has got their cash. They've gone, great. We've got in all of the cash for Harry Potter this year, all of the cash for Peppa Pig. Our job's done. And therefore, there's not that continuation of curiosity down the train. And I think if there was more cash generated by selling more, selling better, cohabitating space from licensees, the brand effectively has to win. I'm just not too sure whether the commercial setup...
It depends on the deal.
It is not interesting enough. I don't know if the commercial setup encourages that type of behavior enough, possibly.
Most of the deals are on the royalty basis. You've got your minimum guarantees, you've got your royalties, but I think you're right. Is it big enough to matter? Have you got a brand cracking the whip to say, can you elevate your sales? Can you elevate your sales? Can I make another X% out of the units that you're selling? I don't think there's that vested interest. I feel like there's almost a hand-off of a relationship. There's my property, go make it work, and it's not quite hand in glove at this point in time.
I think the sort of connecting and adjacent pieces that are missing are internal brand departments and internal marketers and things like that. I mean, we in the Amazon space at Rainbow, I mean, we've got so much data, and I think we probably send so much upstream to brand that Reese is sick of it. And so,
no, we appreciate it. Keep it coming. We've got more data than less data.
Keep him busy.
Yeah,
that's to keep me out of trouble.
Yeah, and I think that's what you need to do as a licensee is take it that you are there to better the IP. You don't have overarching control over it. You need to work within that space, but within that space, you're the drivers, and you need to be sending everything back to be going, these are the competitors, these are the highly bundled items. This is some things that you need to consider when it comes to making brand stores and brand pages that are cohesive. These two categories might be better as adjacent and things like that, and then everybody wins because the bigger the IP, the better the licensee is going to be, the more sales that you can make and the more that you can generate.
Yeah. I mean, we're touching on commercials a little bit. I'm going to make a point here that is really close to my heart as an ex-retail buyer, and I spent maybe 12 years as a retail buyer. Your role was to maximize the return on investment from whatever space you were working with, whether that was physical meterage in store, whether it was a double page spread in a catalogue. And yes, I was a retail buyer when we still bought things from catalogues. It's many, many years ago. Or the digital space. And for the licensees that are watching, I'm very, very sorry, because you're going to roll your eyes and go, Jonathan, why did you even mention this? But it is a missed opportunity for licensors and licensees. If we go back to the Real Madrid example, Real Madrid don't have a brand store on Amazon of any meaningful shape, size, or form. Now, that should be there, and that should be full of well-merchandised, seasonally relevant, highly purchased product that are official Real Madrid product from a number of licensees. I think we're all kind of going, yeah, that makes sense.
Should be, yeah.
But when Real Madrid go into cup finals, or they go into playoffs, or they've got a new player signing, this is such a huge opportunity for the licensor to give up some of that real estate on a brand store. It could be the primary hotspot. It could be a carousel with 10 items in it. It could be a real hero spot. Just like in retail, you do it with end units, you do it with FSDUs, freestanding display units. Sorry, that's an acronym. That's a wonderful place to charge licensees for those hotspots.
Absolutely.
So you can say as a Real Madrid brand manager, hey, guess what? We're in the final of X. We want to feature your football in that slot, or we want to feature this piece of very special merchandise, which is a one-off commemoration of this particular game. And as a result of that, I'm going to give you the hotspot, the prime retail space. When everyone comes to that homepage, they're seeing your product. And guess what? The licensor should be charging the licensee for that real estate. It's luxury prime positioning.
Building brand demand.
But everyone wins. The
job.
licensor can start to monetize their brand stores. And that for me just doesn't happen on Amazon. It doesn't happen in digital particularly well. But in retail, this is bread and butter stuff. This is pedigree. It's been baked into P&Ls for centuries. this is what's missing. And that licensee, too many licensor
We
licensees.
should have printed this out on
Which I
the
know,
wall.
which
We
should
do
be,
it every
should be
time.
much clearer. You know, the licensee may roll their eyes and go, oh, that's another cost. But if, for instance, a brand store has
The
got,
values there.
I don't know, let's say 100,000 visitors over a week on a real key event, if you can drive 2, 5, 12, 15% conversion on your hero product, that is a very lucrative opportunity. That is just not being capitalized at all.
Yeah, and I think it's not just licensed brands that do it. I think that's like a fundamental flaw on Amazon in general.
Yeah,
People treat it as a fire and forget sort of thing. It's like, that's good enough. You know, I mean, it's good enough to generate
the product's
sales.
up there. That's it.
We've done a checkbox exercise. Cool. Maybe run a few deals. It needs to be continually improved. Seasonal tournaments, commemorative bits, milestones within the team or the club. It's not a fire and forget sort of practice. It needs to be audited quarterly. It needs to be improved on seasonally, and then it needs to be redefined every single year, essentially, I would say. You look at some brand stores and they look like 10 years old, or they still got products that are currently unavailable and they haven't been traded in the last 5 years. It's painful to see. And all it takes is a little bit of effort, a little bit of pride within your brand, and just be like, okay, let me just treat this as a continuous improvement practice instead of just a one-time checkbox exercise.
I think there's so many easy comparisons to make as well. If you're doing children's license or toys in particular, or a sporting vertical, think about what you're doing in retail. You know, what you're doing in Tesco, what you're doing in John Lewis, what's happening in the Argos catalog. And if your Amazon representation doesn't mimic what you're doing in retail, you're failing at this job. That's it. And I'm sorry, that's a very blunt remark. But the reality is, the world's largest store is a digital store, and you're not thinking about it like a store.
The window to your brand.
Yeah, definitely. And we need to, when we do, we do quite regular brand refreshes. I mean, we did the brand store a couple of years ago, and then it came for a refresh sort of middle of last year. We're doing specific brands as well, working with, Peter Rabbit and saying, we want to do a back to school special or an Easter themed area of the store. Can you give us an ilk around how the messaging should be? What would you be comfortable with having that two-way conversation? Say, can we receive those indicators? We'll run with it from here, obviously, go through necessary approvals and all of the lovely things. But making sure that we're not just sitting on our laurels, because you can very easily get into that where you just think, like you said, set it, forget it, leave it. It's on there, it's done, tick the box. But the real benefit to the licensor and licensees when you can work together to mimic that, bricks and mortar aspect to bring it through and making sure it is consistent.
And let's not forget, we haven't even touched on the protection that a brand store offers licensors and licensees.
Yeah.
It's 100% owned real estate. We all know Amazon is becoming highly, highly commoditized from an advertising point of view. More of the product detail pages and search results pages are being handed over to advertising space because that's where Amazon's revenue is being predominantly bought. Great, that's the world we operate in. But if you can get a consumer into your brand store and offer product detail page where there's 75% outage to go onto a different brand or being distracted by another product, that is gold. That's where you want your consumer shopping from. We've seen time and time again, conversion rate is richer in a brand store. Average transaction value is typically richer. Lifetime value of the consumer who's shopping in that brand is typically higher. That's the goal. That's where you need your consumers to be. And, we have to recognize not everyone is going to intrinsically go looking for a brand store, but your advertising efforts can start to drive a proportion of that traffic or a significant amount of that traffic to the brand store. The return on investment will be much, much healthier.
Yeah, it gives a little bit of a look into who you are as a brand. You put your entire catalog there. It allows for cross sales, but also allows you to tell your brand story. If you go into a brand store and you don't really feel comfortable browsing it, it's like, why would I buy that product? You know what I mean? You don't have that buying surety if you buy it through a brand store and the content's bad, the conversion rate is low because the pricing is erratic. There's no advertising. There's no segmentation. Is it toys? Is it clothing? Is it whatever? It just gives you a bad view as a customer, essentially. And you're going to be like, okay, well, why would I go into that brand store if I can just go into a competitor's where I actually feel like they care about it enough to put in that effort for me as a customer browsing that catalog, if that makes sense.
I want to suggest, guys, you've done my job for me here, because one of the topics I wanted to go on to talk about was creative, how you represent the brand. And I love the fact you've pretty much segued us already down the storefront, the brand view things.
Almost like we'd prepped and rehearsed this, wasn't it? In a way.
There is not a laptop sat here.
There's not. I can't see
absolutely
anything.
not.
I can't see any.
Five mine.
Hiding behind the little plant on the table. But no, genuinely, I did want to go on to talk about the more. I think we've kind of been down rabbit holes on the challenges and the problems and how difficult this can be to work in as a sector. But also, it's a really exciting place to be. You know, Amazon are doing more and more for brands in terms of how you can bring a brand to life, creativity. You and I have just been talking, God, how much this week about AI tools that we're using on Amazon to help bring creativity to life. Maybe let's just flip this in that direction. Then, what kind of creative opportunities does Amazon give a brand to bring this kind of product to life? Because I don't think there's any brand we've talked about today that you don't instantly get a visual view of. Peter Rabbit, soft plush toys, I can see it and I can feel it. The excitement of Real Madrid, Barcelona, whatever football team, it's a real visual experience. So what can licensed brands do to really exploit what Amazon now gives them in the various touch points and make that product feel really compelling and exciting to buy?
I think it all comes down to having the baseline set. You know, you need to know that brand messaging, have that brand content goals. But with there being so many elements, you know, with the images, the content, A+, brand stories, you've got videos and advertising, banners, all of those different ilks. You can definitely make sure that you're leveraging that brand message to the best of its ability, and making sure that the customer understands what this brand is about. You know, a Disney message that we do is very different to Peter Rabbit or Paddington or Harry Potter, and making sure that you're using that consistency across all of those content elements is really key to driving success, and making sure that the customer knows that, you know, it's reputable. If they see for Harry Potter, you know, the little Quidditch ball flying through on the images, they know for a fact that that's Rainbow Design's product and that's coming through the correct channels, and making sure that everything is as sure as it can be.
Is Brand Store Toolkit as best as it could be? Probably not. It's evolving. It changes fairly consistently. And I think Matt makes a really good point here. I think it becomes really specific to the brand and what they're trying to get across. So, for instance, is the brand releasing a new movie? So the brand store might lean out, not as a tool to drive more sales. It might be a tool to promote something that's happening outside of Amazon. If it's a football club, can it promote the signing of a new player to drive ticket sales, to increase merchandising sales and so forth? Or is it purely a new product release, which is just buy me, buy me, buy me? So I think the toolkit is okay. But I think it's the creativity of the internal teams supported by third parties like ourselves as agencies or other creative media houses to deploy a message which makes sense for the purpose of the brand store at that time of year. And I think with, you know, Andy mentions the emergency of AI, you know, we're all living in a rapidly changing world around us where, you know, we are heavy adopters of AI for things like creative execution, where let's take a seasonal photo shoot as an example, where you want to show a product in spring, summer, autumn, winter. Now, does a brand manager sit back and wait for a very expensive photo shoot in different countries where it's got snow all year round? Or do you wait for the great British weather to start snowing and quick, get the kit, let's get outside? You know, with the emergency of really sophisticated AI tools and managed well, we can create that content now much more rapidly without having to wait for the traditional photography cycles or videography cycles. And that's really exciting. So imagine having full control over a brand store and your product is highly applicable to a spring, summer season or an autumn, winter season. Before we start recording today, we just talked about the fact that some of us saw a splattering of snow. Imagine a world where we move through the great British weather and it goes from lovely and warm one day to freezing cold and snow. Change that asset, change it quick, resonate with the consumer. Because you bet me bottom dollar, not many people are doing that. But we have the tools to do it is the difference.
This excites me for this sector. Touchy-feely visual products, the ability to roll out content quicker, better than ever. Imagine a lot of your product being 7 videos on Amazon, not 7 images. The power to do that is there. It also concerns me in this sector because then when you think about license approval of that content, so let's made up example, we've got a Harry Potter product and we've now animated that and you've brought it to life. Does that need license sign off? Are they yet mature enough to understand the rate at which it is changing?
And dare I say it, this comes back to my point around the licensors are handing off this responsibility to the licensees, and you guys are going through official channels. But we know working with you guys, licensor approval can take time and we have to jump through many hoops. If the licensor comes closer to the middle ground and the licensee comes closer to the middle ground on the other side of the fence, this whole ecosystem just speeds up, becomes more rapid, and benefits.
But if I can still see there's pretty much a 5-year gap between where I think you are as a business, the level of maturity you've now got as somebody who sells on Amazon, and your license owner's level of knowledge and maturity of Amazon. I can see they're on that journey, but to all the pain points we've discussed today, not quite there, but quite there yet.
But I do just think it's easier said than done. I'm not in their shoes, and they will be no doubt wrestling with many, many other business priorities. But if you think about the care and attention that goes into a single piece of product packaging, not only from a legislative point of view, but from a branding point of view and a shelf appeal point of view, why wouldn't that same care and attention and thought go into the digital real space on Amazon? It's let's not forget, it's the world's largest store. But yet, probably more thought and consideration goes into a piece of packaging on a swing tag, which most consumers throw in the bin after they bought the product.
I think the tightrope that you really have to walk is between not changing the brand message or the licensor's brand IP, in the fact that you can have specific rules as to whether it has to be an upturned smile or a straight smile on a product. If you're not at you need to be so specific with a lot of the content that you're doing that it fits specifically within that mold. And I think from everywhere that you're seeing these, they need to be locked down. Obviously, you can't have Paddington looking like anything. It needs to be a specific view. But there does need to be a level of creative flex in that to be able to make sure that licensees can pivot and that we can make sure that we can capitalize on these opportunities, because we want to do the absolute best for the brand, obviously. I mean, that's why
my utopia sees a world where you've got a brand with their top 5 to 10, I don't know, it'll be category dependent, 5 to 10 licensees and a third party like a marketing design agency, like a marketplace agency like ourselves, to bridge the gap between the licensee's demands and needs to sell product well and execute it well, the licensor's desire to protect their brand, their IP, and strategically what are they trying to create with that license, and the role for the third party is to chaperone all of this. You provide the technical expertise the licensee needs and the support to sell, and you provide the guidelines, dare I say it, the stringent control of managing that brand in a digital environment, which the licensor might not be used to working within. That's the perfect recipe.
If I was asking somebody to say the last thing on today's podcast episode and sum up the conversation,
might have just been that.
I think you've just nailed it. I think you've summarised the core of today's conversation. I just want to maybe summarise from my point of view with a few real highlights. Matt, thank you very much for joining us and sharing a proper insider's view. Somebody who's not just there doing it now, but you've been there for a number of years. We've worked very closely together as a business. It's great for you to join us and share that insight. John, blown away by your football knowledge. I did not expect that to come through today's conversation.
Well, I mean, there was a word I was going to say. I just remembered where I was going to
put a beep over afterwards.
Yeah, well, I'll save it for afterwards. Thank you. That's very, very kind of you, I think.
You're welcome.
Thanks, appreciate that.
I think for me, the conversation today really sums up what our podcasts are all about. We call this Beyond the Listings. I don't think we've talked that much today about the typical on Amazon technical stuff. I think that says a lot about what Amazon's success is really about. It's understanding the mechanisms, the challenges, the problems behind the scenes, regardless of what sector you're in. But for us, we spend a lot of time in brand licensing, around licensed brands, and to really understand the nuances of the challenges between the 3 or 4 way dynamic of licensee, licensor, Amazon and consumer. I've really enjoyed that conversation today. It's really brought all that to life. So gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. For those of you that are watching, thank you for giving us what will now be close to an hour of your time. I hope we got to all of your questions and answers. If not, please send them into hello@ventureforge.co.uk, and even myself or one of the team will happily get back to you and answer those questions where we can. Thank you once again for joining us. If you are a licensee or a licensor watching this and thinking, my God, how do I make this better? Again, if you want a quick chat, off the record chat, no pressure from us, just drop us a line and we'll help you out wherever we can. Hope to see you again on the next episode, and thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers everyone.